Welcome back to Zestology, coming to you from central London. One of the real themes on this podcast is it's all about energy and vitality. And one of the real themes is a high-fat, low-sugar diet. It's something that's come up a lot. So many experts seem to say that, look, whilst kind of in exact terms, all of us have a slightly different diet that will suit us, in general terms, eating a diet with a bit less sugar and a bit less carbs and a bit more of the, inverted commas, good fats is going to be good for you. So since it's such a solid theme and since it's something that I've played with and I've kind of intermittently done the keto diet, the intermittent fasting diet and the high fat, low carb diet, I thought I would speak to one of the masters of the genre, someone who really knows what they're talking about. And as the police car goes by, Jimmy and Christine Moore are on today's Zestology podcast. Jimmy Moore wrote one of the top keto books that was actually the first ever keto book that I was given. And Christine has so much to offer as well in the area of nutrition. That's her area of expertise. So between them, they've written a book, and today's podcast is all about living La Vida low carb, as you'll hear. Jimmy's podcasts are legendary and very, very popular as well. Yeah, just so much to offer. So on that low carb vibe, there are a lot of questions, I think, and that's why Jimmy and Christine Moore are on today. It's a double guest on Zestology, and I hope you enjoy it. Here they are. Okay, well, we're recording, so let's go. Guys, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing good.
What's up, man?
Great to talk to you both. Look, congratulations on the book, and obviously big fan of yours already, but you're spreading the message of keto around the world, aren't you?
We're trying. We're doing the best we can.
It's what we do, brother. It's what we do.
It is. Well, what do you think in terms of keto's popularity? I remember I did a little Google Trends search a couple of months ago, and it's extraordinary how over the last 5 years, the graph of keto searches has just kept climbing. Do you think that's going to continue to climb more and more?
Go ahead.
I think so. I mean, and the proof is in the pudding with all these companies coming out with stuff that claim to be keto, but aren't. I mean, they're seeing the trend and they're wanting to get in on the action too.
What kind of thing is that companies come out with that they might say is keto or not? Because I see some of these keto bars and I think, hang on, like 22 grams of total carbs. I'm not allowed to eat that.
Yeah, exactly. Just the other day, we got a product in that claimed to be keto, and Jimmy turned it around and looked at the ingredients. It was pretty pathetic. It was some sort of cereal, but Jimmy, you can...
And it was no fat. That was the thing that got me. I'm like, how do you call it keto and it's got zero fat? It at least has to have some modicum. Yeah. Having been an observer of this community now for the past 15 years since I've been doing this, I've been able to see trends come and go. And it's pretty fascinating to me, Tony, how this keto thing is kind of following in the same footsteps that the Atkins diet did back about 15-ish years ago. Then paleo came around about 10 years ago. And now we're seeing the same thing with keto. What's really interesting as someone who's been in this space for as long as I have is how it's like clockwork. And it almost makes you think, what are they going to gravitate to next? It doesn't mean people stop doing whatever those old diets were. There's still Atkins dieters, there's still paleo dieters, and there will always be keto dieters. But it's just they always seem to look for whatever the hot trend is, some celebrity is doing.
Yeah. So and there's a graph, isn't there? When it's on the rise, everyone's kind of raving about it. But I think you're increasingly seeing a lot of kind of mainstream media pushback on high fat, low carb diets now as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to break the trend of what we've always been talked about. I mean, especially one person here in the United States, what's her name, Jillian Michaels. She's just been.
Isn't she English? Jillian Michaels.
No, she's not. She was on the Biggest
Unfortunately,
Loser.
she's American.
No, because there was a Dr. Jillian someone in the UK who used to look at people's poo.
This is not the same one. This is this lady is a lot worse than that Jillian.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but she's on one hand she will be positive towards keto in certain ways, and then the very next minute she'll be talking negative, and for the past several weeks she's been really negative about ketogenic.
And here's the thing, I mean, they're talking about it. And when I first started blogging, the idea that as little as 15 years later, the conversation within the mainstream of talk about nutritional health would be cutting your carbs and eating more fat and eating more real whole foods that nourish your body. To me, this is a win-win-win.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I'm down with that. And I'm going to use this session partly because I want to talk to you guys about your story, and partly on a completely selfish level. I've got a couple of personal questions I want to ask you as well. And that's the great thing about a podcast, isn't it? You can you can do that.
So I've heard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, you guys, you've been very successful with podcasting. I've been really enjoying your book as well. There's an amazing story illustrated by some incredible pictures. And I always think, a story is such a good place to start, isn't it? Christine, perhaps you could tell me a little bit about your story and the role that keto has played on that journey, because I think, people have heard me talk about keto a lot on this podcast, and sometimes hearing someone who's made it work for them, that kind of brings it to life a little bit.
Yeah, so I was...
Go. Is that your bleeper?
That was
my blood glucose monitor.
Okay. No worries. You got to test sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was born 3 months early. I weighed just 2.5 pounds when I was born, and so along with that comes a lot of health challenges. And it wasn't really until I was about 2 years old that my parents first started noticing some of those issues. The first being my eyesight. So they took me to the doctor, and it turns out I'm blind in my left eye from birth. And then the condition that I've got, my eyesight just gradually gets worse every year. And it did that throughout my childhood and early adulthood. I think I was about 11, I started having joint pain. And then in my later teens, I started having problems with symptoms of endometriosis, but that wasn't diagnosed until my 30s. I started having mood disorders and just a bunch of other stuff. And my family and I weren't making the connection between what I was eating and the stuff that I was dealing with on the inside. So if somebody had looked at me back then, they was, oh, she's healthy, because I didn't have a weight problem. I was actually underweight, really. So and then in my early 20s, for whatever reason, I thought I was fat, and I did a low-fat diet because that's what we were taught to do.
Yeah.
And that resulted in having my gallbladder taken out when I was 36.
Oh, no.
So it wasn't until 2009 that things started to click. I went to the doctor, and he ran my numbers, my lipid panel. My triglycerides came back at 298, and so that was high, obviously. And so I brought my lab work back home to Jimmy. He goes, well, you know what to do about that, because by this time he had been doing his thing for 5 years and I'd been listening to him. So at that point, I just cut out Dr. Pepper, Skittles, and M&Ms. I was still eating a bunch of other crap, but those were the three major things that I took out. My triglycerides dropped from 298 to 136 in 6 weeks just from those things. And like I said, I was still eating other crap. So this thing, I mean, this is obviously a very powerful modality for people to do. It wasn't until 2011 where we went through embryo adoption. We had tried to have children. And in 2008, we were told that we wouldn't be able to have any biological children. So we went through embryo adoption in 2011. I ended up getting pregnant with twins. We subsequently lost them. But at that point, when I got pregnant, I really got serious about my diet, because I had listened to interviews that Jimmy had done about the importance of getting proper nutrition, especially when you're pregnant. So we would even go to the store, get liver. Jimmy would chop it up in a small pill form, freeze them, and I would take it because I can't stand the taste of liver. So that's the only way I could get the liver down. And at that point was when I got serious about my nutrition. And then 4 months in, I went to my eye doctor, and for the first time in my life, my eyesight actually went the other direction and it got better. So we had to get a new prescription, a weaker prescription, because the the ketogenic diet had started to heal some of those things. I mean, it obviously won't correct the eye issues that I've got, but it will help preserve my eyesight that I do have. And so, yeah, I mean, seeing my eyesight get better, my joint pain, once I got my vitamin D levels to where they needed to be, I saw a lot of my joint pain go away. I was able to get off my antidepressants that I had been taking for 10 plus years and so many other things. And it's just it's been a real blessing to kind of see those things heal on the inside.
Yeah. And as a result of that, you then went on, as well as, in terms of diet, studying nutritional therapy. And that's a big focus in the book, isn't it? Kind of applying the principles of a high fat kind of low carb diet, but also from a kind of technical expert perspective.
Exactly. So many people are struggling still who are doing a ketogenic diet and they don't know why. And the Nutritional Therapy Practitioner Program is just an amazing program that tells you why things go on in the body, other things that just aren't being talked about, like proper digestion. We do get into blood sugar regulation and some really specifics in there, even glucagon resistance. We talk a little bit about that. We talk about the endocrine system and how it's practically impossible to balance your hormones properly until you get your blood sugar under control. We talk about vitamins and minerals in detail, the signs of deficiencies of these minerals. And then in the back of the book, we give a full list of food sources for each mineral and vitamin. We talk about hydration. So these things just aren't being talked about a lot, and so many people are still struggling. So hopefully this book will provide some answers for them.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, Keto Clarity was the first book that I was given on keto before I was even into it. A friend of mine said, just take a look at this. So thanks for that. It was a good introduction into it all. A pretty in-depth introduction into it as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think, one of the interesting things about keto for me is that I know that it's had a massive bearing on my own personal health. And I think, and actually, I'm a bit of a geek and I tend to do quite a bit of tracking. And on a daily basis, I'll write down how I feel and kind of what I ate and that kind of thing. And I can tell when I've been keto, it's better. But it is quite hard to kind of keep it going, isn't it? What do you say to people when they find long-term they lapse back into being low-carb rather than keto?
Why is it hard to keep it going? What are your theories?
I suppose, firstly, when you're eating out a lot, it's, a lot
so
of
don't
food.
eat out a lot.
Yeah, it's fun, though, isn't it? I'm going out tonight. And actually, we're going out for a steak, so it'll be pretty easy to eat out.
There you go. Keto. That's keto. So now what's the problem?
Yeah. That is actually a very good question. When you analyze what is the issue with it, I suppose there's just a lot of tasty foods that have carbs in it.
People miss their carbs. People want the carbs. But here's the thing. When you get to a certain modicum of keto adaptation, all of that desire for what I like to refer to as crappy garbage, it goes away. And you know what I think the secret sauce of all of this that makes it work well for people, that a lot of people, even eating keto, they forget about because we've had it hammered in our heads that it's a bad thing. They're not putting enough fat on the food. So therefore, they're getting hungrier a lot sooner. You mentioned at the beginning, before we came on the air, hey, what have you had to eat today? And I said ketone bodies because I haven't eaten today.
Yeah.
Same thing with Christine. She hasn't eaten today. How do you get to that metabolic state where you're so satisfied that you wake up in the morning and you don't follow conventional wisdom of making sure you have the most important meal of the day being breakfast? Neither one of us had anything. And that's the power that comes from getting adequate fat, and all of those cravings go away. So yeah, I don't understand what the falling off is all about if you're doing it well.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. I'll tell you one of the things that I've found with intermittent fasting, and it's been a more recent thing for me, but actually I really noticed it from the start of going low carb, and that is I get so thirsty, and I really, whatever I try, doesn't quite seem to rehydrate me. You probably have a lot of people that say the same thing, but I'd love to know your perspective on that.
Well, to be honest with you, that's something that I have not heard. Most people don't get enough water to begin with. And so by the time you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
Yeah.
So I tell my clients to sip water throughout the day. The only thing that I can think of that would make you thirsty like that is if the foods you are eating have a lot of salt in it. And that would make you thirsty too.
Well, also just the keto adaptation where you're dumping water and people aren't replenishing those glycogen stores. They forget about this stuff. And this is kind of when people first start going keto, they don't even know like the really, really basic things like eat more salt and drink more water. Those things are critical, just as critical as what you're putting in your mouth for food. It's one reason I wrote Keto Clarity was I was trying to get people to understand it's more than just cut your carbs and all's hunky-dory.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's really interesting. I know you've got a section in the book on snacking, and you've just mentioned that you guys haven't eaten yet. I'm fascinated to know, is that a daily thing? Is it one meal every day?
For me, I think it's about 50-50. Sometimes I'll have 2 meals. Sometimes it's one. Recently, most of the time it's been 1 meal a day. And yeah, I mean, if I do get a little bit hungry, I will just get a palm full of almonds or something like that. But yeah, mainly just 1 meal recently.
And I'm currently doing an experiment with kind of a ketogenic version of carnivore. And yeah, what I'm finding is I'm very easily intermittent fasting from like 19 to 29 hours, somewhere between those ranges. And it's very simple for me to do that. And then when I do eat, I'm either eating 1 meal, and again, sizable meal because it's literally all you're having for the whole day.
Yeah.
But then I'm able to fast for another 20-something hours the next day. So it's a cool metabolic state to be in.
It certainly frees up a lot of time when you're not preparing and eating food all day. You've got a lot more time on your hands to do other things, haven't you?
Dude, I do 6 podcasts a week. So yes, I need more time on my hands.
You're on it. I need to match your levels of podcast productivity. In fact, I don't think I could. But that is impressive. And what was the keto adaptation of the carnivore diet?
What do you mean, the keto adaptation?
Well, you said you're kind of doing a keto version of the carnivore diet. What exactly are you following? How does that pan out?
Yeah, so the traditional carnivore diet doesn't really look at the fat and protein. You just eat meat.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is being very deliberate at choosing not just meats, but also animal-based foods. So that would include some dairy products in there as well, that would fit within the template of carnivore, and then making it ketogenic. So my goal has been to be between 70 and 80% of my calories coming from fat. And I've been right smack dab in the middle by average, right around that 75% on most days. And I'm not really paying attention to calories either. So I've had a fluctuation of calories from as low as 1,600 to as high as 3,200. So it just depends, and I'm listening to my body. When you've done this keto thing for a little while, you try to be a lot more intuitive about your eating and not make it a math game.
Are you allowed a bit of mustard with the meat?
If I wanted mustard, but I would choose mayonnaise if I was going to do that. But yeah. Spices.
So the carnivore diet, for people listening, because we haven't really spoken about that on this podcast, it's it's kind of what it sounds like, and it's gained a lot of popularity. It's had a lot of publicity because Jordan Peterson's daughter's done it, and that it might not be her originally who started it, but I certainly heard
Michaela
her podcast with
right?
Michaela, her podcast with Joe Rogan. I've read one of the things about the carnivore diet, a suggestion that the reason why so many people clear up autoimmune problems with the carnivore diet is simply because it's also massively an exclusion diet. But for you, that's not quite so relevant because you are still putting other stuff in there.
I've been on an exclusion diet with keto for so many years. So
yeah.
It was really a lateral move. It wasn't like it was this drastic thing for me to go carnivore, because I was probably 95% carnivore with what I was doing with my traditional keto.
So my thoughts about that, about the carnivore diet is...
Yes, I was wondering that. What does the nutritionist think about it all?
I am all for somebody doing a carnivore diet for a period of time. My concern stems with the gut flora. And yes, I think this is why a lot of people feel better when they do carnivore because they have an imbalance in their gut of an overpopulation of the bad gut bugs. And so by doing carnivore, you're not really feeding those gut bugs, those bad ones. And so you kill off those bad ones and you start to feel better. So in my opinion, I mean, if somebody feels better and then they, go back to eating some vegetables and they start feeling bad again, I'm all for them sticking with carnivore. But I think maybe with a lot of people, and this is just my guess, that it is a gut health issue thing, and they're eliminating things that would feed the bad gut bugs, and so they start to feel better.
Mm-hmm. It certainly would make sense, but there's no denying that a lot of people are trying this diet and having massive success on it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm all for people doing it, to trying it, to see, because we're all different and different things work for different people. So if you're having success with it, keep doing it.
Yeah. So it's mostly one meal a day for you guys at the moment. What about supplements? Do you take them, and do you take them outside of that one meal a day, or are you kind of going for the 24-hour fast with nothing in between?
So for us, yes, we do supplement. There are certain things that we know that we struggle with, that we need extra supplementation with. So for both of us, we have the MTHFR gene mutation where our bodies can't convert folic acid into folate. Folate and folic acid is B9, and that's a very important B vitamin. So if we're taking just, regular supplements or whatever, we're not getting the B vitamin that we need. So we supplement with the methylated folate. I've had a history of low vitamin D, so I supplement with a D3. And then to help with inflammation, we both take fish oil. And then we just overall take a good multivitamin. And because I have struggled with digestive issues, I do take some digestive enzymes. I do not have a gallbladder, so the digestive enzymes help me digest my foods. So there are definitely times where we do need to supplement, and this is where you need to pay attention to your body. For me, I cannot take supplements on an empty stomach. I get nauseous, so I end up taking my supplements after I've eaten. So it's still within that eating window.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it makes sense that if you're doing, even if you don't have to take the supplements because you feel nauseous while you eat, it would make sense that putting anything in your stomach would somewhat break the fast. What do you think, Jimmy, in terms of taking supplements in the morning? Or
I don't think supplements break the fast per se, unless you're doing a fatty type of thing like a fish oil that's going to have calories. I think most of them are calorically absent. And so in that context, I think taking vitamins are fine, although I am very concerned just based on my own experience of taking vitamins on an empty stomach. Not a good idea sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I get some major reflux and heartburn. And we Christine and I were traveling and we were meeting up with somebody, and I took a bunch of vitamins thinking, okay, we're going to eat soon, so I'll be fine. And I got really flush, and I was sick there for a little while, wasn't I, Chris? Yeah. Where I felt like I was going to throw up. It was bad. So I'm not a fan of taking them on an empty stomach. If I'm going to take my supplements, it's going to be with food. But as far as supplements themselves, breaking a fast, unless they're calorically dense like a fish oil, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wear one of these Oura rings. And
so do I.
Oh, good. Excellent. I'm very interested in the heart rate variability. And I have spoken about this before, but just to quickly explain, it gives you heart rate variability score at the end of every night. And the theory is that the higher the score, the kind of healthier you are. And I've played around. I haven't quite worked it out, but I played around with all sorts of things. Definitely eating a lighter meal in the evening for me, and eating earlier in the evening seems to help my score. Is that the same with you?
What I've noticed, I don't rely on the heart rate variability of the Oura because to me it's not as accurate as putting on a heart rate variability monitor in the morning and testing then. Right. What I've found is when I eat later in the evening, my heart rate is actually doesn't come down to its lowest until very, very late in the sleep cycle, like right before you wake up. Whereas if I push the feeding window to earlier in the day, my heart rate actually ends up being the lowest in the middle of the sleep cycle.
Yeah.
So
I found that too. Sorry, Christine. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say to kind of maybe say why you have that experience with your Oura ring. The body, if you tend to eat a big meal in the evening or late, in the evening, like right before you go to bed, your body has to prioritize the digestion of that food over your sleep. And detoxification. So in your sleep, the theta and delta waves, the deep and REM sleep is where you do your restorative healing and just repair of the body. So if you eat a big meal or if you eat late, then your body is not able to effectively get into the theta and delta waves and heal itself. And so maybe that could be why you see the difference in the score.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And just to close on that point, I've noticed that even if I think this is the case, I need to do a bit more research, but if I have an early meal, but then I take a few supplements last thing before I go to sleep, then it feels like it's still affecting my heart rate and my heart rate variability. But maybe I need more research on that.
It could be that's interesting. I would keep tinkering with that to see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Jimmy, have you got the old school Oura ring that looks like a massive mafioso ring, or the trendy new one?
I had that one, and I was like, I like the new bells and whistles of the new one.
Yeah.
So they sent me one of those. So yeah, I've actually tried both. And the first one looked like one of those old class rings when you graduate from high school.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, the new one, I don't even notice it. It's so light. I think it's made of titanium, why it's so light. So yeah, I love it. And I think they're going to continue to add new things. I'm a big fan of the Oura ring.
I am too. And actually, a few months ago, Prince Harry was photographed on more than one occasion wearing one.
I saw that.
What is
That's
this?
awesome.
Is it like a new forever love ring from Meghan or something? And that must be the best thing for that company that has ever happened. But
yes, they used it too. I saw him repost it. And, oh yes, we even have royalty that wears our ring.
Yeah, quite right. Yeah. So I mean, I wanted to ask you, Christine, about sweeteners. I know there's a section on sweeteners in the book, and you talked about Swerve. I don't think I've used Swerve. What is Swerve?
Swerve is just erythritol. It's one of those that has found for most people to not affect their blood sugar or cause an insulin response. And so that's why Jimmy and I use it. They have several different, they have a baking blend. I think they have a brown sugar type of powdered sugar. So it's really good for baking if you do a lot of baking. We don't, around Christmas time we did, but it's just erythritol. As far as the other sweeteners, some of those sweeteners can affect blood sugar and cause an insulin response and therefore cause a weight loss stall. So, and there's so much we still don't know about all these sweeteners and how they affect us in other health ways like cancer and all this sort of stuff. So we just try to stick with ones that are natural, and liquid stevia is another one that we do, because if you get these other ones that are in the packet like Trevia, these packets, they have a bulking agent in them, and that bulking agent, I mean, it's what is it called? Maltodextrin?
Maltodextrin is just sugar.
Yeah, so I mean, they're putting sugar in a sugar substitute packet. So, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And this is where people, if they use a lot of that stuff, it can add up. Their carbohydrate intake can add up, and they wonder why they're stalling. So, erythritol, the Swerve is the main one that we use.
Yeah, and actually that's the reason I wanted to ask you, because I have got quite a sweet tooth, and I love those sweeteners, and I think they work great. But there's something about, or even the natural ones, but I've not tried Swerve, that I do find that there's something about my body. It's a little bit like crack. It's like kind of that monk fruit sweetener, especially. It's called Lakanto. My goodness.
I've never had crack, so I don't have anything to judge that by.
I mean, I'd like to point out that I'm just imagining what it would be like. But the monk fruit, I mean, honestly,
for a quote friend, yes,
yeah, exactly. I could bury my face in a plate of this kind of monk fruit sweetener. It's just so delicious. It doesn't. There's something about my stomach that doesn't seem to love it. So I do wonder whether my blood sugar is being a bit spiked even by the natural sweetness. But
Well, some people are very, very sensitive. I can't have a lot of it, or my tummy will do flip-flops, and I think in reality that's a sign of some gut health issues.
yeah,
If you do tend to crave a lot of sweets, that may be a sign of what's called gut dysbiosis. So you have an overgrowth of the bad stuff and not enough of the good stuff. And so what do those bad bugs feed on? They feed on the sweet. And so I've been trying to, work with myself with that. And I think maybe once we heal our guts, those cravings will go away, and maybe we'll be able to tolerate some of these things.
yeah. Well, exactly. I have as well, and it's not easy. I've been listening to Dr. Ruscio, who's got an interesting kind of gut problem.
Yeah, Mike's awesome.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he? Yeah, and he's got some good gut stuff going on, but yeah, it's not particularly straightforward to get your gut sorted out if there is a bit of a dysbiosis.
Because we all come at it from different angles. I mean, some of us have taken, I know for me and Christine, both were over 25 rounds each in our lifetimes of antibiotics, and that doesn't come without consequences. Of course, now that we're healthier, we don't have to do that, but you still have the ramifications of those past antibiotics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that alone is going to take quite a while to sort out, isn't it? Now, are there any other supplements that you guys take that you think are particularly good for the keto diet?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the main one is your digestive enzymes, because you tend to eat a little bit more protein and fat on a ketogenic diet. And so the main point of digestion for proteins is in the stomach. The main point of digestion for fats is in your duodenum, in the upper part of the small intestine. So if you're deficient in stomach acid production, you're not going to be able to especially digest those things.
I wonder do you say duodenum instead of duodenum?
I don't think I've ever heard either of those words ever. I was trying to make a note of it. It's just great.
We have an Aussie friend who's a nutritional therapy practitioner, and when we were on her show, she said, and it goes through the duodenum, and I was like, the what? Oh, you said duodenum. Yeah, duodenum. I didn't know if it's the same in the UK.
Well, I've never heard of it, so I'm going to Google it, but either way, it's a great word.
Yeah. So it's just basically the upper part of the small intestines is where the food is in the stomach. It goes through the pyloric sphincter, which is the muscle at the bottom of the stomach, and it empties into the duodenum, which is, like I said, the upper part of the small intestine. It's fun. Yeah. But so making sure that you're able to digest those things properly, you need a good digestive enzyme, especially if you don't have a gallbladder, because you can find yourself not being able to digest foods properly. The main point of digestion for carbohydrates is in the mouth, and so that's why it's not as necessary to make sure that you have digestive enzymes for those, but it does help in the digestion of everything.
Well, I'm glad you've reminded me of that, because as I said, I'm going out for a steak with my mates tonight, and I think a digestive enzyme, bearing in mind we'll probably finish eating about 10 o'clock, would be just the thing to sort me out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can also drink a couple of glasses of warm lemon water with your meal. That gets the bile flowing. You can eat certain things like radishes and what's the other thing that Jerusalem artichokes, I think, helps bile production. Okay. So there are certain things that we list in the book that if you have bile issues, you can eat those things to kind of keep your bile flowing.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's excellent. I suppose I won't go out with a pocket full of radishes tonight, but now I've loved talking to you both, and I've got a question that I've asked everyone. What is one book that you guys would recommend, and one tip for living with more energy and vitality? This podcast being about energy, and obviously the keto diet is so good for energy. But what is one book that you would recommend, and one tip for more energy?
Man, oh man, you're asking the question that's like asking a parent, which is your favorite child? Because I've been in this space for 15 years. I've seen a lot of good books come and go. Man, if I had to distill it down, it would come down probably to Nina Teicholz's book, The Big Fat Surprise.
Oh yeah, I've read that, and she's been on the podcast. She's great, isn't she?
Yes. I mean, it was a toss-up between that one and maybe Gary Taubes's original good calories, bad calories. I think in the UK they call it the diet delusion, I believe is what it was called there. So those are resources that I think everybody that's in this space now, keto ain't new. And those two guys were talking about this stuff long before the keto trend came along. Now, as far as the energizing thing, it's going to shock you. It's going to be something that you're like, really? That's going to give energy? Yeah. But here it is. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Fasting. When you regularly intermittent fast, or even push it a little longer, into maybe a couple of days, 3 days, to get the autophagy benefits and some of the other benefits of doing fasting, it goes counter to what you would think would happen, because people think, oh, if I don't eat, I'm going to get weaker and weaker and weaker until I fall over. But just the opposite takes place. I did a book signing the other day. Christine and I did a book signing just up the road from us. And when we started the book signing, I was 24 hours into a fast. And I was doing my thing, standing in front of the crowd and talking and real energetic. And somebody asked about fasting. I said, would you believe I'm like in my 25th hour of fasting right now? And their jaws all dropped to the ground. Yeah. And it just shows you that the body probably doesn't need to be fed so often like we do now in our culture. If it's anything like it is here in America, in the UK, it's bad. Everybody's eating breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack, midnight snack, and never really letting their bodies be naturally energetic that comes from being in a state of fasting.
So for me, I think a book, and I can't remember the author's name. I'm going to get out of here and remember it. So, Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. It's one of the books that we had to read going through the Nutritional Therapy Practitioner Program, and in reality, 9 out of 10 people are deficient in stomach acid. So if you're starting out with being deficient in stomach acid, everything else is going to be messed up. So that's really
wow. That's an incredible stat, isn't it?
It is. It shocked me. And so that's why I think everybody, because a lot of people go to their doctors with heartburn and acid reflux. So Jonathan Wright and Lane Leonard, PhD. Yeah. So a lot of people go to the doctor for those symptoms. What does the doctor do? Prescribes a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, or an antacid. You're just making things worse. A sign of that acid reflux and GERD is due to low stomach acid. For the energy thing, I would say to try to get your nutrients from real whole foods. A lot of people depend on processed foods. Even on a ketogenic diet, we call that dirty or lazy keto. I would encourage them to get the best sources of food that they can. It doesn't have to be grass-fed, organic 100% of the time, but this is where your micronutrients are. And if you are deficient in micronutrients, including your electrolytes, calcium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, and sodium, you're going to have a lack of energy. So making sure that you're getting your micronutrition in is very important.
Yeah, it really is. Look, I feel energized having spoken to you guys for the last half hour or so. Jimmy and Christian, it's been a real pleasure. Well, look, you guys need to come to the UK and do a little book signing here.
We'd love that, man. Set that up. Get on that.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
We've been once, so we'd love to come back.
Oh, good. Well, if you ever do, it'd be great to see you, or maybe in America next time we come over. In the meantime, thank you so much for coming on Zestology. Where can people find the book and more about you guys and the 7 podcasts a week?
So I have a website, rebootingyournutrition.com. The book, Real Food Keto, has a website, realfoodketo.com.
And I just rebranded all of my stuff so it's easy to find everything under one roof. It's 5 letters. LLVLC stands for Livin La Vida Low-Carb. .com.
Fantastic. LLVLC.com.
Yep.
Good stuff. Great to talk to you.
What? Good to talk to you.
There's nothing dirty keto about you guys.
Well, let me tell you some stories.
And just on the low-carb vibe, recently I've been cooking low-carb brownies. Well, I say I've been cooking them. My girlfriend's been cooking them, really. But low-carb brownies with courgette. She's been doing most of the work. I've been the kind of low-paid sous chef who grinds the courgette, or grates the courgette is probably the correct terminology, isn't it? But that worked very well, actually. Seemed to substitute flour quite nicely. So, hope you enjoyed it. That's enough from Chef Tony. Thanks for listening to Zestology this week. Zestology Book Club is on Facebook as always. You can get the 3 Zesty Things newsletter by heading to tonywrighton.com. A lot of stuff in there that doesn't make the podcast. It's all my favourite links of the week. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 10. You never quite know. But that's all at tonywrighton.com. I'll be back next week with another podcast. And until then, have an excellent, energised and zesty week.